With all of my experience in Sultan's Sanctuary, I finally decided to give the sequel a try. I spent about 25 hours crafting powerful weapons, taking down all the nameless mages, and even returning a weary soldier back to his pet cat. This is my 100% completion of Sultan's Sacrifice. We select a minutely amusing name, choose the Sage class so we get to start with 3 mana potions. Usuri is our crime because I thought it was a bag of salt, but no, it's actually silver. Craft my stunning good looks, and a new journey begins. For my crime of Usuri, I become a marked inquisitor, sent to hunt down mages. But before we can make it to camp, a wave of red magic strikes down our reindeer. We free ourselves from bondage, take off this sack over our head, and oh cool, maybe I can beat the tutorial boss first try. Yeah, that should have been more than expected, honestly. We awaken a tent covered in some magical aura. This healer explains that the Mage Bane rite has succeeded. I am now immortal and will become spellmarked anytime I perish. He gives me 5 healing flasks and welcomes me into Pardoner's Vale. Down some steps, we speak with a woman who points out the mirror gate behind me. We can use what's called arcane runestones to transport ourselves to other worlds. At the moment, all we have is Ashbourne Village. After wandering around for a bit, I run into Uryx, the first boss. Every class in this game gets a melee weapon and a ranged option. Ranged options have a limited supply that refreshes at checkpoints, while melee does melee things, of course. Right now, I have a small magical bolt that is sent out for not half bad damage. I expected a lot worse, to tell you the truth. Halfway through, I decided to try out my magic. I can let loose 3 magical orbs that track the enemy for really low damage. But low or not, it keeps me very safe and can be refilled because I already knew beforehand that mana potions would be essential. Well, off to a good start it looks like. Slay Uryx, Necklav of Ears, Bane of the Inquisition. Yes, you are allowed to make fun of me when I inevitably mispronounce half the names in this game. I know what I'm about, and can kind of live with it. Down in a mostly empty cave, we can snatch up the grappling hook from a corpse. This is used, as you could probably guess, to grapple onto glowing hooks placed all over the different maps. I also collect my first idol here, which is slotted as one of the 3 trinkets. It's pretty terrible with a minor health upgrade, but something to equip for the time being. With more of the map accessible to me, I stumble upon my first mage, the Pyromancer. Mages act as roaming bosses who lock off parts of the map. Some of the doors are locked with a red seal until you defeat a certain number of named mages. You do fight these guys in an arena, but not before chasing them down for a while. Fight off enemies, fight off the mage's minions, and do as much damage to the mage himself so he has less health in the actual fight. At any point during this process, you could restock health and mana potions for free just by resting. The only tricky part is I have no clue where each boss ends up for their arena, so I'm sometimes walking in with less heals than I could have. For the Fire Mage though, he was already at half health. Didn't stop me from getting burnt a lot, and this weapon Sage starts with is pretty darn terrible if you ask me. But a weak boss is a weak boss. We force him to kneel and cut him down soon after. Devour the Pyromancer. After you defeat each named mage, they give you a small snippet of lore to try and follow. To sum them up for you right now, since I don't want to read through all of them, they accuse you of being the bad guy, while also admitting they're kind of the bad guys. Nobody's good, and we're all fighting each other. Good to know. Oh, and the Inquisition we work for is not exactly what we think. More on that later. In the main hub area again, we can speak with an NPC in the corner. He will sell you armor, weapons, and trinkets from each mage you slay. All you need is materials granted from slaying said mage, or even his minions can drop them. This lets you farm out mages to collect all kinds of gear, or do what I did and find the one item you like from each set. For now, I chose the Molten Ring, which increases max health. The skill tree is similar to how it worked in the first game, although now a few stats have been added and some taken away. I increased my max mana by 2 and stamina by 3 because I don't have a weapon I really want to build into yet. Back in the first world, we could speak with a silver armored knight. He tells me to speak with a tree up above him. Up several grappling points, I speak with a face on a tree, earning me the Wastes achievement. Uncover the pilgrim's path to the lost city of Bolgaron. This tree has taught us a new rune we can use at the Mirror Gate. But before leaving this world for another, I wanted to do some more exploring. I found the Water Mage nestled up in a village. He seemed much more resistant to my pitiful magic. His bubbles fall down from the sky, exploding around you. He pounds the ground with his large staff and summons geysers of water under his feet. Then you must parry this giant bubble he summons, or it tracks you to the ends of the earth. During these mage fights, if you deal enough stagger or say poise break to them, they'll grant you a grapple on their head. Slinging up there gives you a free attack that deals massive damage. The water mage is surprisingly easy to read and deal with, but at the time I fought him, my gear was clearly not fit for the job. This took forever and had me very worried that the later bosses would be ridiculously spongy. With no heals or magic left, the blue behemoth is finished. Devour the Hydromancer. Behind this arena was a chest containing the wooden scythe. Question, do scythes have the same crazy strong moveset they had in the first game? In town, I purchased the Bulwark Ring for increased physical defense, then level into class 1 Reapers and 3 more stamina. No freaking way. Scythes do in fact have the same crazy strong moveset they had in the first game. With a very familiar weapon back in my hands, we faced the Ice Mage. While finding him, I spoke with a merchant who said he'd make his way back to Partner's Vale. I'd say the Ice Mage is probably one of the more annoying ones. He summons active magic all over the screen, and the more you get hit by his attacks, the more you get built up with ice. Yes, ice is actually a damage over time effect from this boss, kinda like Frostbite, I guess. My new weapon's damage is truly incredible, and the moveset is perfect for staggering mages quickly. I no longer have magic to cast from afar, which feels bad, but getting a little bit better at the melee combat can't hurt in the long run. And I found out that grappling doesn't 100% finish off a mage. For some reason you need at least some hit of damage after. Not bad now that I know about it. Devour the Cryomancer. I spent more time wandering around this first world trying to find what I could. Materials, healing upgrades, and various other items are scattered around, and large parts of the map are locked off even still until you move on to other worlds. I'll skip all the boring gathering or else this video will be 2 hours long, but I did do my best to explore every inch of each map before moving on. Mainly, I didn't want to be under-leveled for anything I faced. We can go back now and speak with a new merchant who exchanges silver for more salt. Down lower, we can craft a few materials into one additional ranged item. Help Verdant Voice Trista to craft your first potion, salve, or decoction. Well, let's check out World 2, that being Bolgaran. Ah, a good desert biome. Running past a head in a box, I found he would actually speak to me. From what I gathered, the gods of this world demand sacrifices. It keeps them happy regardless of what state the world is in. There didn't seem to be much in my way until I reached the hate-cursed matriarch. Okay, so this is just Quelaag from Dark Souls 1 if she was far quicker and more aggressive. There was a massive trial and error section here until I found a groove. Sadly, that groove kicked in a little late, as the monster was merely an inch from death when my luck finally ran out. The HP amount on this creature was far higher than anything I had faced so far. I like to use ranged items to soften up the boss first, but these feel really hard to use in boss fights. The aiming just isn't that quick to use, and you have to press 3 separate buttons to target them effectively. This mostly goes away the more you use them, but I opted to melee as often as I could for now. The fight's pretty awesome once you get used to the attacks. It takes forever though, which is weird since there isn't much else you can do beforehand to prepare better. Medium roll is serving me well enough, although some armor in the future could be nice. 5 full minutes go by before the final strike can be done. Slay the hate-cursed matriarch, whose vile rule set Bolgaran on an unstoppable march towards destruction. We're getting close to the most important part of this run, so let's upgrade into Class 2 Divine Glyphs, just so we're prepared. After getting lost for a little while, we can defeat some really troublesome creatures with many legs to find another corpse. This one contains the Magnesium Supply. This item lets you activate wooden pulley systems you can use as zip lines. I'd say these are the most fun platforming idea in this game, and much faster than constantly climbing ladders all the time. While using them, I encountered a random pedestrian staring at this gust of wind. Apparently, these are terrors in reality caused by magic, but they can't help us get anywhere quite yet. Instead, we face the ever so important Wind Mage. For whatever reason, this deviant just wouldn't go to his arena, so by the time I fought him, he was actually at half health. Fine with me, but a little stupid on his part. The tornadoes he summons can interrupt many of your actions and really screw with you dodging his other attacks. But my scythe was putting in work, ending this encounter in seconds. Devour the Aeromancer. This mage being defeated, we can head back and purchase a new Reaper, the Gale Crescent Scythe, which deals fire and cold damage. It scales in Conviction for our purposes, and after leveling into Glyph Reader 3, we can use its 2 different magic attacks to summon Blades of Wind and literal tornadoes. Crafting yet another piece of ammunition for 18 in total, it's time to, oh hey look, another idol. This one boosts our health and focus, which is our mana amount. I also have a Pilgrim's Urn for offensive buffs, but it's not great at the moment. Jumping across some rickety platforms, we encounter a peaceful NPC meditating in the middle of nowhere. She grants us a bottle of Altar Stone Vintage. This can be given to the Rune Reader back in camp for access to the DLC. If you fall down in the middle of those platforms, you can speak with a sheriff. Say yes to him when he asks if you want to hunt down evildoers. Prevent powerful haze-burnt magic from falling into the wrong hands by joining the Sheriff Inquisitors. This is the new faction or creed system as far as I'm aware. About time for another mage, this one being the Rock Mage. He too was all the way down to half health by the time I actually fought him, except I genuinely despise this guy. For some reason he's nearly impossible to dodge because I think you're supposed to parry him, but I simply wasn't doing that, making him a nightmare. The good news is, my new magic deals so much damage that the stuff practically plays for me. Summoning one tornado deals like up to 14 hits on larger targets. While that's happening, throw out 2 gusts of wind to slice for juicy damage. Heal through every single attack because I suck at this guy, and wow, I love my new weapon. Devour the Terramancer. It's about time we hit a brick wall in this adventure, don't you think? Meet the Tireless Exalted. This guy is not a mage, instead being one of the main bosses of this world. I think there's 2 in each, along with 4 or 5 mages per map. It was pretty easy to tell that this was a necromancer theme, as he looks pretty necro-y, and summons 3 misty orbs with eyes that track you down. I had 0 magic going in for the first time because I didn't realize this was a boss. Combine that with learning a new set of attacks and it was a quick first loss. My tornado has as much range as the screen can see, so that bodes well for me. And after a few tries, I started getting into a groove of reading his melee. But one mechanic I didn't notice was the orbs build up a status if they hit you. It's a pretty slow build up. However, if 4 or 5 connect too quickly, you can take a huge chunk of HP loss from this death buildup. Stay careful, only attack when he summons, and that should be completely avoidable. But alas, I was not aware of Phase 3. When this Necro boss reaches a quarter left of HP, he begins summoning a swarm of gray projectiles from his staff. And it is an insta-kill every single time he does this. Get hit even a single time and all the rest of them stun lock you, activating the status. Now, one mechanic I haven't explained yet are these guiltless shards. When you die, your red health bar turns blue and you are now what's called spell marked. You're supposed to use these shards after each death to become whole again, I guess. Which the game never really explained what this does to you anywhere I could find. I think you take more damage and lose all your salt upon death when spell marked. My reason for mentioning this though is I started with 12 of these shards and by the end of my tries only had 4 left. 8 attempts, that's not that bad. Yeah, well, all my tries were 3-minute fights where I did completely fine and got one-shotted when the boss was almost dead. I was infuriated by this boss. It seemed like no matter how well I played, he randomly caught me with a melee that threw me into the magic while I couldn't input anything. But finally, after an insane amount of suffering, I took off most of my clothes for a light roll and instantly won. Stay in close so you can attack once and then dodge through. Summon tornadoes anytime you can, back up to refill on magic, and jump over the orbs since they track a little too far. When insta-death becomes a problem, run as far away as possible, then dodge towards the boss. Spin that scythe like a madman and put this demon to rest. Slay the Tireless Exalted, guardian of Bolgaran and those who sleep within. I hate this boss. We finally found a material to grant us an additional health flask, and I could throw a few upgrades into my Gale Crescent weapon. Although this game doesn't seem to tell you how many upgrades an item has, so I have no idea what level it was at until we maxed it out. With a lot of salt, we increased Conviction, or our damage, up to 25, granting Class 5 Glyph Reader. Back in World 2, I was able to find my first nameless mage. Named mages unlock parts of the map, while nameless mages are completely optional. These guys give up their names, delving further into madness to become even stronger. They attack way faster, deal more damage, and seem to have more health as well. There is a named and nameless version of every single mage, and while Steam doesn't care if you fight any of the nameless mages, I do. As for this run, I will make it my duty to find and defeat every single one. Some of them are extremely hidden in remote parts of the world, and how could I call this 100% if I only fought the weak versions of bosses? Also, I still hate the Rock Mage. But tornadoes do be tornadoing. Up in the extremely trap-infested tower, we encounter the undead mage. And I don't exactly know what happened here because I didn't do any damage to his health at all before the fight. Actually, I do know. This area has so many enemies, they were forcing the mage to move before I could attack him. And I was really overwhelmed by the skulls and bones barreling towards me. He actually managed to get me twice because the run back from this previous checkpoint is awful. Instead, I teleported to a better location and tried again. Unfortunately, we are seeing a flaw in my playstyle right now that makes this game far far more challenging. Parrying is an essential mechanic to nullify many attacks. Dodging does not work every time because you avoid one instance of damage while rolling into another, but obviously you don't want to block 1,000 skulls coming your way either. Using both of them in tandem is just not how I play most games, so this took me some getting used to. But heck, this scythe poise breaks mages so quickly it's kinda dumb. And if you heavy attack after a grapple, you slice like 15 times for big damage. Devour the Necromancer. Through some stone halls, we jump around to meet with a Green Knight. He claims his home has been overrun by mages just like this place. Learn the runes leading to the reeking swamps of Corvius Mire. These will be the signs needed to reach World 3. Jumping past a very scary swinging trap, we interact with a member of the Shroud. He swears to the three and asks us to slay our fellow Inquisitors. We say yes, of course. Impede the march of the Inquisition by joining the Shroud Alliance. This game's story is a little confusing, but if I'm reading it right, these are actually the good guys. Well, the goodest of the bad guys, since there really isn't anyone good here, but yeah, it's all pretty messed up. The Ochre Tome of Fates was an important item I found, as these can be given to the Rune Reader. Then in a chest I found the Healer's Set, which looked fantastic and immediately found its way onto my person. Tell me this isn't the best armor you've ever seen. Yet another mage stands in our way, the Light Mage. Mage of Sparkles? Not sure what a Thumamancer is supposed to be, but he's it. Might as well just do this over anyway, since I have 0 mana. Hey look, I'm finally learning to block. Personal growth is what it's all about after all. Okay, that's enough magical mace spam from you, my friend. Defeat the Thumamancer, which I think roughly translates to magician, or for our context, quite literally a mage. He dropped me my first utility artifact, which doesn't do much because I don't use my ranged items all that often, but it's got some nice benefits for other builds. I decided to bump up my resolve or mana as the tornado uses a lot of that precious resource. Oh nice, the Mage had an amulet that increases runic arts damage. Slot that bad boy and never take it off. Another upgrade in ammunition, as I wish for more mana I can't find. And it seems the Mirror Gate is closed right now. On the far side of the Vale, a guard claims the king wants to see me. He is not well and is being poisoned by the mage's chaos. We must find a way to the outer Copse in order to save him. Yeah, he isn't looking too well, I don't think. With some more tools in hand, I went back to World 1 for another look around. Almost immediately, I found the other boss. The Green Huntsman has long-range bow attacks and up-close axe swings. Magic is obviously insanely overpowered in this game, but I'm running out of mana so quickly it can never finish the fight. One good Reaper combo should clean this up, as I was definitely supposed to fight him earlier. Slay the Green Huntsman, Guardian of the Deep Wilds. 3 tornadoes in 1 slice was all it took to get the Lightning Mage. He was stubborn when it came to giving in, but nothing you can't tank through with many health potions. Devour the Electromancer. Inside Ash Peak Castle, I meet with an epic-looking NPC. His name is Inquisitor Sellet. He's been hunting for years and asks that we give him a guiltless shard to cure him of Spellmark. I oblige, of course, because any friend in this chaotic world is well received. Further up, we encounter a different NPC who explains the nameless mages. Apparently, they're supposed to give better rewards over their brothers as well. The Fire Mage actually gets an entirely new mechanic where he summons a minion that makes him immune to damage. That was something, but didn't do much to save him, I'm afraid. And that NPC we spoke with returns to the hut area after this, selling a few unique items. The one I decided to buy was Lake Sprig Incense. When used, it actually converts some of your ammunition amount into some mana. This is extremely underpowered, almost worthless, as it converts lots of ammo at once, but grants very tiny amounts of mana. I used it anyway because I was desperate for the blue juice. I found most nameless mages to be really hard when moving around, as they are all placed in super inconvenient locations. But once in the arena with them, it was a repeat of our first encounter. Them being faster doesn't change that much, and I prefer to stay away from them if at all possible anyway. For example, take a look at the nameless Cryomancer. Ice Mage has like no health. I was surprised both times I fought him. I decided to purchase the Cryomancer's Pick. This is your dagger that you use to execute mages. It increases my cold attack, which my weapon does do. Not the best upgrade ever, because most mage items are not helpful for this build honestly, but it did provide a noticeable buff. We finally reached the paladin looking creed. I tell her my heart is bright like the dawn, which is a little far-fetched at this point, but whatever. Aid your fellow inquisitors in the hunt by joining the Dawnlight Order. I also found and joined a less than law-abiding gentleman. Seek out profit and capital from haze-burnt husks by joining the Blue Heart. I finally decided to look this up, and it seems the factions or creed groups sell you some weapons and armor. They aren't useless by any means then, but not something I need personally for this specific run. And finally, I found the Poison Mage. I thought he was in the first world, but just could not figure out where. I will mention they do not let you summon more than one tornado at a time. It does have a cooldown before you can activate it again, which is a good thing because I'm not learning any movesets whatsoever as it is. No skill to be found here, just me devouring the Venomancer. With another healing flask for up to 9 in total, I gave the gray Tome of Fates to the Rune Reader. There's one of these tomes in every world, but heck if I know where I found this one. I say it's about time we give World 3 a shot. Of course a swamp. Why does it always have to be a swamp? So the mimics here are terrifying. I think this was actually the only world with mimics, and to my shock, they never got me. Although, when you attack every chest out of pure fear, that tends to be the case. The Mushroom Mage really ticked me off because I found it with no way to refill any of my mana. 3 healing flasks, almost no ranged ammo left. Looks like it's back to the old slice and dice for this fun guy. His poison is special and much more powerful than normal green toxins. To balance him out, they gave the poor dude very few attacks that are a threat. Don't touch the mushrooms. That's about all the advice I can give you for this one. Although that's easier said than done, to be fair. Devour the Fungomancer. Another talking tree grows in this world as well. It claims that the haze of foul magic can't infect one such as itself. Foreshadowing if I ever heard it. Grappling up into the trees, we find Marega Gredania, or as I call her, the Tree Witch. Her whole shtick is turning invisible, throwing down explosive magic, and then summoning puppets. She's unbelievably easy near the start, because when I have mana, boy am I a happy camper. When that runs out, we still do well for the most part. She did surprise me towards the end by summoning several puppets at once and catching me in AoEs that don't even look to be connecting with me. That could have gone better, but the regular bosses do seem easier than mages, at least for the most part. Slay the Hag, the Child Devourer of Foulmurk Marsh. It's here on another corpse we find the Lumen Stone. Anytime you see these rings of stones, this can be held up inside to spawn light paths for traversal. More ways to explore means more mages to hunt. But first, I finally found one of the blue flowers needed to craft another mana potion. I was psyched about this, really. So I fought this thing. It was a giant cyclops holed up in a random room. It took longer to kill than most mages do, and it had a decently aggressive moveset as well. After his defeat, I found it had a utility artifact which increased Runic's art damage. Since that's really all I care about so far in this run, I'll take the buff. Standing all alone in the misty swamp, I find the Grey Knight again. He suggests making our way to the top of the tree where we might learn of a way to Dreadstone Peak. On my way there, I was hindered by the corrupt mage. He makes use of flies, hooks, and cages. I think he's meant to be sort of a torturer type. His minion turned out to be more of a boss than he was, as it would not leave me alone. And I got caught in every single cage he summoned, so that was fun. I'm not really sure if there's a cue to look for when he does that, because I was too busy rolling away from flies. Devour the Corpumancer. I returned to camp crafting another flask for 10 heals in total. The Corpumancer had a ring which increases attack power, so I swapped out the defense ring for it since physical defense isn't that important when most mages use magic. Back in the swamp, I opened a chest to find an armor set I really wanted to use. The guards from the swamp use this, but man is it heavy. Not for a long time, if ever, plus I still really like the healer look anyway. Time for one of the coolest mages in the game. My man is a giant tech mage making use of explosive dynamite, green missiles, and spring-loaded jumps right to your location. And he's dead. What the heck, man? This one was really cool and he lasted maybe 7 seconds. Devour the Mechanomancer. Okay, maybe the nameless version will be more exciting. Ouch, I'm pretty sure he just drop-kicked me back to World 1. Was out of mana anyway, so I'll take the do-over. Once you get a mage into their actual arena, you don't have to go chasing them around anymore. Even if you die, you head back down to begin the fight with the same HP they lost during the hunt. And I'll give him credit, the nameless version could decimate my entire health bar with one rocket. Too bad for him, I had one of the swamp knights helping me out. And wind magic, it go whoosh. This might be the best wind has ever felt in a game. I am not hating it. At level 56, we have around 38 thrown into conviction. I was told the cap was 40 for most stats, so that's what I'm aiming for. Well, no more stalling, because we need to move on, and the Sap Blood Heart is in our way. Hold on a second. Something about this boss is familiar. Wait, is this just the Coveted from the first game all over again? Yes, except this time the heart attacks sometimes, and there are more than 2 ghosts. In fact, almost this entire game comes from the first game. Attacks from bosses, mages, and regular enemies can be seen copycatting Sanctuary. They do so with more flair, obviously, but it's fun to notice if you do. Not much else really to say here, as I found this ghostly being to be extremely easy. Fun, but I didn't have to do all that much, let's be honest. Slay the sap blood heart, filled with the malice and memories of those lost to time. Up above this arena, we gain our next set of runes. Raise your lumen stone and find a path to the bitter wastes of Dreadstone Peak. But before we venture into that frozen wasteland, we do need to do some cleanup. The real light mage makes an appearance. He was genuinely difficult. I had to chase him all over this tough arena. I also think he might be more resistant to fire and ice, as I was merely tickling him. A great change of pace from other mages, as he isn't super fast with 13 different things in a row. Instead, he summons stationary magic that slowly starts to overwhelm you if you don't move away. Also, why can you grapple across like the entire arena? No complaints. I think it's awesome actually, but it's also funny to see you extendo an infinite grapple from that distance. Lights out for you, Mr. Glowstick. Devour the Luminimancer. After stopping to increase my ammunition up to 20, I input the runes traveling to the snowy mountaintops of Dreadstone Peak. And I have to say, this is the best area in the game. The encounters are not super ganked up like they are in other places. It's plenty lit up, unlike in some of the darker caves, and the platforming is at its best. This doesn't mean it's a joke though, as some of the hardest hitting mages roam in World 4. Boss number 1 is a duo fight. And again, I wasn't aware this was a fight, since this was my first solo playthrough, so I had only half my magic. Even still, they weren't much. Now, I tanked a lot with my multiple flasks, but this is one of the very few times they give you a decent-sized arena. Run from side to side, attacking in between their different moves. Tornado, as broken as it is even stronger since it can attack both bosses multiple times on a single health bar. The big Minotaur one has slow attacks with seconds in between each, letting me easily focus on him and avoid the fast nimble fellow. One of the better duo fights I've completed, really. They pose a threat, but are not so aggressive you feel overwhelmed. Slay the two that remain, who bid their fellow pilgrims farewell in the name of the Elven. Inside the temple, we collect the ether cloth bolt from the final corpse. This can be used at those rifts caused by magic to fly upwards. A pretty fun mechanic, half the time. We use it to speak with a head again. He makes less sense than before, basically claiming that the gods of this world are going to bring down suffering upon us if we succeed. And then he says the dragon's flames will find me before we find him, which started to make me think that this head here is a vessel for the final boss, similar to how the Scarecrow and Nameless God worked in the first game. Good old lore being as cryptic as ever. Our first mage of this fourth world is the Brain Mage. He uses brain power to do something. I really don't know. This purple fellow was so much of a pushover, I didn't even get to see any of his attacks. No clue what he does. Unless what he does is trick me into over-preparing for nothing. Devour the Neuromancer. Oh hey, the time-based mage is right here as well. Now this guy is cool, and another very important mage for this run. While chasing him around every which way, I stumbled back into the Grey Knight. He explains that a ship called the Falling Star is crashed up to the northwest. It was commissioned to hunt down worms or dragons, but the thing didn't even survive its first voyage. Before we can investigate a crashed ship, of course we need to defeat a Time Lord. This manipulator can slow you down using pillars of compressed time. He can fire arrows at you from afar, he can summon blades of fury to swiftly slash at you for several seconds. Add in his quick blades he uses as melee attacks, and wow is it tough. Then they ruined it by placing him in the worst arena ever. There are around 2 or 3 samurais in the arena itself that hit you the entire time you fight him. Doesn't help that they deal half your HP in a single attack. Just take him out as quick as you can, but man do they make things more difficult than they need to be. Moving isn't as useful due to the slowdown, so blocking keeps you out of the pillars and safer instead. The first mage in a while I got to see several different moves from. Devour the Chronomancer. It seems the king has been brought to this old elven palace. Apparently the Falling Star ship has something to do with finding this elder Copse place. I decided to purchase the Mind Stone ring from the Brainy Mage as it increases maximum focus. Replace the health ring with it for an extra almost 2 entire tornadoes. That's a pretty decent ring. And from the Time Mage we can purchase Temporal Reaper, a class 4 scythe with 3 new magic abilities tied to it. Both of my current scythes are as upgraded as they can be for the moment, with the new one dealing more melee damage but less with its magic. The first move summons a time wave, slowing any enemy and projectile that gets inside. Very useful, but extremely hard to get in a good place. The second ability summons blades that slice back and forth for several seconds, dealing some nasty damage. And the third skill summons a rain of arrows and an arc. It can be good sometimes, but it's kind of underwhelming for a class 5 glyph. With 21 ammunition now in my pocket, I'm ready to check this out in combat. The falling star is not open yet as I need to defeat one more mage first. Unfortunately, this is where my journey hits another bump in the road as I chose the hardest mage in the entire game as my next target. After climbing up several platforms and defeating multiple tanky enemies along the way, we make it to the dark mage. Good thing I have a new scythe because more than anything did I need it. This shadow figure is fast, and I mean really unbelievably fast. His basic melee swings combo easily as you try to take a potion you never in a million years could have gotten off. He doesn't take near as much damage as I would like, and for the second time this run, we encounter an insta-kill move that I can't in any way deal with. During the engagement, he will start to throw sword slices across the screen. Dodge behind him, and he swaps to still hit you. Dodge the first one, and the other connects. Get hit by one of them, and you're thrown into the rest, dropping you on the spot. I struggled for 20 minutes, trying to even come up with a plan. At first, I came close with a bum rush style. As soon as the boss's arena begins, we spam blades and arrows to stun lock him. The slow time ability just doesn't work, unfortunately. It never lasts long enough, and most often bosses avoid it altogether. I also attempted a luck-based strat where I focused purely on melee attacks, hoping to stay close and avoid the waves altogether. Neither plan would pull me all the way through. Heck, sometimes he was just straight up laughing at me as he infinitely spammed blades 4 times in a row. Man, did this one have me stumped. Glad they gave this mage the worst run back in the game as well, considering he's the only one I've died to more than twice. I just don't understand how you deal with an undodgeable attack. And that's when it hit me. Parrying. Yep, the small mechanic I'd forgotten about because it hasn't been needed for hours now. Parrying is how you survive the slash move. Block exactly when each wave is about to connect and you win. This took me a single attempt after I changed to parrying. Okay, I'm a little mad at myself for not figuring that out sooner. Defeat the Umbramancer. This area also granted me another blue flower, so on up to 5 mana potions we go. The falling star was, I guess, a flying ship meant to hunt dragons, which doesn't seem like it was too good at its job if a dragon now lives on it. I could see this beast giving players trouble, but only if you didn't play the first game. He's almost a 1-to-1 of the Kraken worm you fight in Castle of Storms. What's really enjoyable about my current build is, yes, ranged magic is definitely overpowered, though it gets even better if you combine both Reaper's magic together. Using the D-pad, we can swap after casting a tornado, so both time and wind magic can decimate our foes. We will siphon all of our mana in seconds this way, but wow is it effective. I will say the time scythe is a little underwhelming compared to the wind one, since it is a class 4, but when combining all 3 magics together, it performs exceptionally well. Slay the dragon, guardian of the elder tree. We speak with the final tree on the end of this boat, rejoin the lost runes leading to the forbidden elder Copse. It would seem that one of these trees, who can't be spellmarked, has mysteriously become so. That can't be good. After upgrading my scythe some more and leveling up to around 22 mana and 40 conviction, I decided to begin a very long process, attempting to wear heavy armor. This requires an insane amount of endurance to stay in medium role, but I was determined for fashion purposes. I joined up with another creed, this time engaging with those of Chaos. Wreak havoc throughout the realm by joining the Chaos Hunger. And before taking on World 5, there are some mages I need to hunt down. The Demon Mage I found particularly easy. Up close, his attacks keep you on the move constantly, but from a distance he was nothing at all to contest with. He's got a decently sized health bar leading to some very messy gameplay near the end. Still, I'd say he was one of the better mages at combat. Devour the Dracomancer. The Nameless Time Mage got me good, but then on my second attempt he started with under half health. Apparently he'd been fighting another mage the entire time who was somewhat stronger. A couple of grapples should put him out of his misery. Upgrading my health flasks up to 11, it's us against the devil himself. This fiend here is one of those mages that you try and avoid at all costs. You need to go far out of your way to find him. He runs around in a difficult arena with super strong samurai and this moveset. Oh boy, is this one of the movesets of all time. Magic gets summoned constantly, and he can sprint across the entire arena to hit you twice per attack. Overall, I would say I'm not excited to see the Nameless version, considering chugging heals barely got me through. Devour the Diablomancer. I think we need a good old rematch with a now more powerful Dark Mage. Unsurprisingly, the Nameless version of this Umbromancer was very easy. It still took me a few tries since he keeps up pressure, but parrying the mage waves is 80% of the challenge. It also just so happens you can cheat and summon a tornado before even entering. This causes your stagger to build up way faster as you're never not hitting him. Easy game for babies. Jumping over to World 1 for some more shenanigans, I stumbled upon the nameless poison mage. While hunting him, there was a door I hadn't been in before. Oh look, another inquisitor. This friendly fellow is studying glyphs of magic that are said to be forbidden. He suspects the Inquisition doesn't want us to get too powerful. And we'll see this man again, I would imagine. Oh yeah, I was chasing a mage. Early game boss, late game build. A combination that never seems to fail me. Our literate friend moves on to World 2, where he continues delving into magic with the reasoning that any tool can be used for evil if the user chooses to do so. The Mage had a nameless version near here, so I stomped him down really quick. Nameless or not, having almost fully upgraded weapons turns fearsome foes into child's play. Oh, finally, the Blood Mage. One of the fewer mages I'd missed altogether before, and I kinda wish I'd still not been able to find him. If there was a top 3 most difficult mages list, this man would be on it, and he'd be on it twice. For a game that wants you to parry a lot, they sure did give him 7 attacks in under 3 seconds. I'm just gonna stick to my dodge roll button, if you don't mind. At least merely outspacing my opponent works 9 times out of 10. Devour the Sanguimancer. Class 5 heavy armor is now unlocked, but still a long way to go before I can wear any. I wanted the end of the game to feel sort of end-like, so any more mages I could find are a welcome sight. Nameless Necro took me no time at all. Nameless Blood Mage is trouble, but nothing I can't handle since his new orb summoning move doesn't really seem to bother me whatsoever. Nameless Air Mage, more like Nameless Dead Mage, am I right? It was a stupid joke anyway. World 3 holds the nameless fun guy, who still poses around 0 threat whatsoever. There was another faction I'd missed before, so that's another club meeting I'm never gonna go to. Protect Inquisitors marked for death by joining the Oathbound Watchers. Nameless Corpumancer topples over, and that should be everything I know how to find at the moment. There was about 10 minutes spent on a brief fashion show as I tried to pick out something different. In the end, the Green Guardsman armor won me over, but no helmets because heavy rolling might as well be a sin. Alas, it's time we enter a world not seen in a millennia. We enter the runes and travel to the long-forgotten Elder Copse. This area is a wild ride, that's for sure. The bright and colorful background is fantastic to look at, as the nightmarish creatures eat you alive. There aren't many mages here at the end, but the Kinetomancer makes up for that with his raw power. Honestly, it feels like Crystal Mage would have suited him better, but I don't make the rules around here. I kinda like how this game starts mage fights off with lower health. I mean, it's from you chasing him, but the idea is a nice change of pace from multiple phase health bars other games tend to throw at you. I'm down for it, really. Devour the Kinetomancer. And then there's the Paper Mage. No, really, he's made out of paper. Now we are just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And you know what? Not the worst theme they could have chosen. Imagine Witch of the Lake if the magic was faster, you didn't know the moveset, and oh wait, blocking is overpowered in this game. Never mind. Devour the Bibliomancer. So I found something really weird. After going back down to where the Paper Mage had been, there now seems to be the tutorial boss roaming around down here. His attacks still unbelievably suck, but he also doesn't have a health bar. So does that mean he's not a boss, or what? Well, since he's still alive after 5 entire minutes of casting tornadoes, maybe we'll come back later and decide then. The map of this World 5 is split into 3 sections. You have a tower on the left, a tower on the right, and in the middle is where you start and end. Let me tell you, when I say the right tower was brutal to get through, I mean the right tower was brutal to get through. They pack a ridiculous amount of enemies on each floor. If I hadn't had the tornado with me, I might very well have lost my sanity. What little I have left, that is. After many struggles, we finally reached the worm boss. Why a worm? I don't know, since he doesn't look anything like one. What they should have called him is Drag King 2.0. Multiple fire attacks to avoid, and to his credit, he's way more challenging than the Drag King ever was. Luckily, 5 mana flasks was finally just enough to beat bosses using pure magic. So even though this is an aggressive worm who keeps you on your toes, there was never any chance of me losing this one. Slay the worm that does not die, champion of fire and all that lives below. Behind him, we grab the fire crystal that you need to reach the final boss. You mean to tell me that the nameless Paper Mage makes you travel through that dreaded right tower multiple times over? Nope, that is it. I am throwing in the towel right now. In all seriousness, it's as bad as it sounds. Insta-dropped by magic, again, and again, and again. Another one of the worst runbacks in the game easily, and it's hard to even get in the arena before you're already done for. Mages also spawn kinda randomly. Sometimes he was on the far right, and other times he was right next to me. This can make it really difficult to know what you should do. Luckily, a good tornado beforehand deals with the 2 extra enemies and stunlocks him twice, long enough for me to heal. Sadly, it seems heavy armor negates damage no better than light does, but we did get him down in the end. Back in the hub, we can at last fully upgrade our time scythe. Employ Warpsmith Zakiel to enhance a piece of Inquisitor's gear to its maximum. Another shot at that tutorial boss doesn't sound half bad right about now. He managed to one-shot me with range magic several times before I came up with a plan, and that plan was to use Wind Tornado and run away. Do this on repeat until we're completely out of mana, then, since I don't get a health bar, which by the way was really annoying, we try and stay alive while slicing and dicing any chance we get. Eventually he falls to the wind that never stops howling. And what do I get? A weapon upgrade I don't need, no achievement, and hardly any salt to upgrade with. Well, that was a real dud and a half. But hey, I did in fact beat the tutorial boss. No, I'm not doing it at the beginning, this was hard enough. Now heading up the left tower, we reach an outside perch where the king resides. The soldier now sells me a new scythe, but one that has no magic attacks. So forget that, I'm all about these cheesy range tactics, man. I'm then told to scale the center tower, complete your royal quest, and gain a glimpse of your true nature. I'm then given an elixir that doesn't exactly tell me what it does. Obviously I drink it, because what better way to find out? What the heck is that? The icon of Pandemonium blocks our way to the top. A quadruple-winged, one-eyeball-having cone-shaped thing. Do you even want to know anything else at this point? And I'm sorry for those who wanted to see an interesting and involved battle. Because the flying conglomerate of features moves backwards, he sits inside my tornado the entire time it's in the arena. I actually have not seen a single boss so far that fit this perfectly for my attack. One single cast of magic dealt half his HP. You gotta love it. Slay the icon of Pandemonium, champion of air and all that lives above. Behind him, we pick up the blue crystal. With both the red and blue in hand, we can open up special locked doors, barring our way to the final stretch. We interact with a strange creature as he tells us we shouldn't be here. The mages have apparently been born of their hatred. I head back, increasing my health flasks up to 13, which seems like a very odd number of max heals, but I was glad to have them. My beloved Wind Reaper can now be fully upgraded, and with 30 endurance, I still can't wear a helmet. Our new friend explains that the gods demand a sacrifice. Apparently the one before me tried to end this cycle, but in the process his mind was broken, spilling madness and chaos throughout the kingdom. His whispers lead mortals into becoming mages. We must make a sacrifice in order to end this disaster. The Undone Sacrifice, an empty shell of armor filled with a dark power. Fitting that the final boss would wield my weapon of choice. It's clearly the master of its trade after all. Wow, this is a final boss fight if I've ever seen one. While I was slowly learning his moves on each attempt, I ran into a problem that was not easy to overcome. At any point during the fight, whether that be the first 3 seconds in or after minutes of dodging, he can decide to do a grab move that is an insta-kill even when I'm at full health. Heavy armor does nothing to save you, and it's sometimes pulled off the split second after you get done dodging. This makes blocking seem dangerous as you might be blocking a grab that goes through it. Well, unfortunately, this is due to 2 things. Number 1 being that I haven't put any points into health yet. In the first game, you leveled up health each time you put points into anything. It would scale your health naturally as you went through. Here, health is actually a stat that I didn't have any salt for because I needed endurance, conviction, mana, and even some stamina. Number 2, heavy armor is practically worthless if you don't upgrade it. And the game never gave me any items to upgrade armor. You can remedy both issues by farming mages, getting more levels, gaining upgrade items for armor, and then you're playing a 2D monster hunter of sorts. But after fighting every mage and nameless version, I wasn't gonna do that. No, instead, we just need to practically no-hit the entire thing. Taking damage is possible, but doing so leaves you open to a grab, so don't if you can help it. I eventually gave up curing my health since I didn't want to waste guiltless shards. For my final attempt, I actually threw in poison bombs that I'd saved up throughout the run. This does very little, but it is at least some damage over time. When he stabs spikes out of the ground, run back and forth trying to stay away from him. Magic is still the play as usual, but don't be spammy or he can grab you while you have no way out. Near the end, he adds in an extra flip to his slam attack, so dodge back through him to avoid it. Block when he throws sticks at you from the sky, and with just a little luck, we can skim on through. That was way harder than I expected. Ah, what the heck happened to my face? So the elixir the king gave us let us see the real truth. We're actually some sort of sickening monster who eats the hearts of those mages. I did not need to know that, but thanks anyway. Slay the undone sacrifice, one of the two who embarked. But while finishing the game sounds great and all, we still have quite a few things to do. With our full armor now equipped and at the ready, let's take a look at the DLC world. Heart of Alterstone. Once there, I intelligently choose to drink this mysterious drink sitting in front of me and fall over. When I awake, I have been transported to the Home of Champions. This area is a series of rooftops and platforming sections that takes little time to move through. There are no mages whatsoever here. It leads to the Keeper and the Kin, who are a complete pushover. They somewhat resemble the two bosses from World 1, but now of course they fight together. Again, you might think the slow time ability would be amazing for situations like this, but since it doesn't last long at all or deal any damage itself, wind feels more mana efficient. That was a lot easier than I expected, to be honest. A werewolf-looking NPC tells me that this place is filled with infection. Morons are fed delusions of divine prophecy. And then he gives me his weapon out of nowhere, which was kinda weird, but whatever. This lovely-looking lady appears to be the true boss of this area. And out of nowhere, the Time Slow manages to do something amazing as she vanishes before my very eyes. Maybe not the selling point of this scythe, but when it works, she's a beauty. Slay Sharena, the true herbalist. The woman who gave me the DLC rune sits here trying to explain more lore to me. I leave learning nothing, more confused than ever. Classic stuff. The next area is a pink hall filled with lasers. You need to jump past each as it ends and before it continues. Surprisingly challenging at times, actually, as you can't easily see what's beneath you. After some time, we reach the 4 divines. You can only damage them when the faces are open, and they kind of, sorta, maybe attack you. I have no idea what this even is. Honestly, I was having fun with the idea of grappling around a boss arena, but like, the boss practically can't damage you, and you mostly stand there watching it move. Listen, I'm not here to really critique per se, mainly to experience the journey, but if I can be frank for a moment, this might be the worst boss fight I've ever fought. Awesome idea, subpar execution. Or maybe this game is a lot harder without ranged whirlwinds. I'll never know. Slay the 4 divines. Now, some of you might get a kick out of this, but I got lost for almost an hour here. After the boss, there just didn't seem to be anywhere to go. I checked the first area, scoured the pink halls, nothing. After some frustration, I checked the wiki to find out I'm an idiot. The next section was on the other side of the larger boss arena. All you need to do is grapple up there, and yeah, that's a little glimpse at my gaming experience for you. Considering how easy the DLC region has been so far, I was in for a rude awakening. A large blue biome awaited me where 20 sorcerers would cast explosive tracking magic the entire time. These are the worst to deal with, and 90% of this world's challenge comes from them alone. Luckily, it isn't all that large, and there is thankfully a checkpoint before the boss. This is the final boss of the DLC, which I keep calling it that, but for those who don't know, it was added on later as sort of free content if my information is correct. Barracks is probably the fastest boss in Salt and Sacrifice. He's got a smaller version of the wave attack those dark mages love to use, and his health didn't seem to be affected much by my two sides. For the most part, mages can be bulldozed through since you get grapples up to their head if you stagger enough. Regular bosses don't give you this massive damage opportunity. My first attempt looked pretty bad. You can tank almost everything and no one-shot grabs, thankfully. But while I thought I had him with no heals left, we find the one boss who has a second phase. Alright game, you got me. Can we please go back to not having these now? Part of the challenge is seeing what a boss can do, and after seeing this for just a single time, I locked in. Blocking waves like a pro, blocking his rush like a pro, actually just block everything because it seems to do the trick here. It was also important to only use the wave attack on my wind scythe. The tornado is not as great for once, as Barracks moves through it quickly, negating most of its damage. Time magic is mostly fire and physical, I think, which seemed to be a really bad play here. The battle was tough, but with 6 heals to go, we enter phase 2. His face rips open, not unlike mine does now. I mean, it always did that, I guess, but for some reason I just couldn't see it. Wait a minute. Jumping spins, buffing for no reason, which grants me free attacks. Aha! This is Ronan Cran from the first game, if he was like way more souped up. Melee seemed like a tough one to pull off near the end, so my mostly ignored ranged items get their time in the sun. Definitely would have liked to buy a better one of these, but I didn't have enough upgrades in the skill trees for them. Epic boss, and one of the more fun moments I had in this game. Slay Barracks, first of the marked. A lone woman stands idle in this place. She claims this is where all marked Inquisitors are made, but they never remember it. These people learned how to create what I've become by studying those monsters in the Elder Copse. Those mages may look like monsters to the naked eye, but we have become something even darker, even more sinister. With the final area explored, there are 3 side quests to complete. The scholar we met before can be found in each world you open up. I'd been finding him at random, but with the game almost over, I finally went to the wiki for some direction through these maze-like worlds. In the swamp, he now dons a hood, claiming his writings mention some forbidden vault in Dreadstone Peak. Up a very long cliffside, which I have no idea how he scaled, he sits explaining he has found a way into the Elder Copse. Atop the right tower of this final world, we find him one last time. Except, things have changed. He has been overwhelmed with knowledge and power, becoming a mage before our very eyes. It pains me to bring down one of the few friends I grew to like along my journey, but when a mage hunter sees a mage, the only thing he can do is hunt. Witness the ascension of a true scholar. May your soul rest in peace, friend. Another one of our few friends can be found, him being Inquisitor Solette. You can also find him once in every world as you go. Each time he asks for a guiltless shard as he falls to mages time and time again. The death and hopelessness finally gets to him up in the icy mountaintops. It is here that his obsession for death brings him to a point of no return. Before our very eyes, he is transformed into a knight of exceptional abilities. A fast warrior with no magic to speak of. Only an aggressive nature and well-forged sword to match. Our duel takes its time, but in the end, all fall to a master of the scythe. Help a fellow Inquisitor reach their full potential. 2 friendships made and 2 friendships ended. The good news is we finally acquire the best set of armor, the Gaingin set, which has the most interesting design by far. But it puts me back in heavy dodge state again, so guess we're leveling endurance some more. For our third quest, we speak with the Grey Knight. After finding the Elder Copse, he congratulates us and returns to Partner's Vale. His armor can be found in the same location after he leaves, and best of all, this might be my favorite part of the entire game. If you go back to the hub area, the Grey Knight can be found down by the cat. It turns out we've brought him home to his cat he named Konos. He grants us an upgrade material, and we pet the cat, because how could you not pet the cat? After bringing 2 of our only friends to their own doom, it's nice to have one happy ending where a good man reunites with his pet. By now, I almost have every achievement, but the next few require some work. There are various ores around each world you can collect. They're used at one of the NPCs to craft different types of fire bombs. Turn each of these into her and you earn well stocked. Help Verdant Voice Trista craft every possible potion, salve, and decoction in the Inquisition's arsenal. But that just means she can now craft them. To complete the next step, we need to collect all the materials needed to actually craft the potions, which includes maxing out our mana, ammunition, and health flasks. This took about 45 minutes to finish off and definitely requires help from the wiki. There was about 1 or 2 mushrooms I didn't happen to pick up while exploring. 2 blue flowers were way too hidden for me to find, which would have been nice to have since 7 mana potions is quite a lot. And lastly, there were 3 ammunition upgrades I hadn't found yet. The final one had you drop down onto a platform that looks like it would make you fall to your death. So yeah, maybe check the wiki for some of these. It's pretty detailed, although hard to read at times. With all these turned in, we collect Top Shelf. Upgrade all potions, salves, and decoctions to their maximum level. Before we end the game, I wanted to finish off the last nameless mages I hadn't encountered yet. We will be required to play NG Plus in order to get the second ending, and I figured better get the hard fights out of the way now. I checked every single nameless location again just to be absolutely sure I fought them all. While I clean up these fights, let's talk about the story really quick. Sort of summarize what we know. The gods of this world are happy and will not interfere as long as they are given a sacrifice. If they aren't given one, then they bring down their wrath upon this world. A group gathered and studied the powers held within the Elder Copse. Using what they learned, the Marked Inquisitors were created. These are people who have committed some great crime. They become an undead of sort and are sentenced to hunt down mages for eternity. Mages, thought to be the enemy, are actually your fellow Inquisitors, men and women who delved deep into the knowledge of magic in order to gain more power. Eventually, they succumb to this magic, losing themselves and turning into some sort of creature based on what they studied. This kind of explains why each mage comes from a particular element and uses magic to match said element. The Inquisitors, of which we are a part of, are the victims. They hunt mages, and in doing so, become new mages for other Inquisitors to hunt. This process seems to be tearing apart the world, creating magical rifts or wounds. The only way to save everyone is to defeat the previous sacrifice and become one ourselves. With the final boss defeated, we must take his place, becoming the third and final sacrifice. For those who remember the 3 Creed from the first game, that number might make a little more sense. The only thing that is not clear to me is who these select few are who become mindless Inquisitors instead of mages. Say, the Inquisitor Select, of whose armor we wear now, and the final boss of the DLC. Both are, or at least were, Inquisitors, but something happened to them. They no longer hunt mages, but have lost their minds to the chaos around them. At first I was like, okay, this is really lame, because if everyone is the bad guy, then who cares what happens? But the more I tried to understand, the more interested I got. Salt and Sacrifice is the name of the game. The goal is to upgrade with salt, defeating monsters and mages in each of the regions. Then, at the end of your journey, you must sacrifice everything you've gained in order for the world to stay intact. Refuse to sacrifice yourself, and the gods will make you pay. That should be the last of the mages, so let's check out the other DLC mode really quick. You have the option to engage in an arena sparring match. You enter in a large arena where you fight one mage after another, defeat several randomly chosen mages in a row, and at the end you take on 2 mages at the same time. This is an endless game mode where once you win, you do the same thing on a harder difficulty. I believe those tomes from each world are given to the rune reader, unlocking the different mage types you can face. It is a cool idea as you get to earn the materials you might want for other armors, weapons, and trinkets, all while fighting without chasing stuff down. I was gonna see how many rounds I could complete as like a mini build challenge type of thing, but decided after losing on the second difficulty to go ahead and move on. The problem is when primarily casting with magic, you will always run out of your main attacks by the time the duo mages appear. And using pure melee against 2 of them spamming all the time doesn't seem very feasible. Now Rage, on the other hand, is a different type of ability other weapons can have. This builds up as you melee to then let you cast powers from your weapon. Think magic, but you get to refill it by attacking. That sounds perfect for this mode, honestly. Or you could play it in co-op to make it even more fair. It's interesting for sure, but as a solo magic user, I wasn't able to test its limits fully. Instead, we make our way back to the top of the Elder Copse. If this world is to continue, then someone must give themselves up to the gods. And that someone is me. Climb the tree. The gods' rage must be endured. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a make the climb ending to Salt and Sacrifice. To my knowledge, this is the good ending, where we must suffer, but the world is saved because of our efforts. In around 21 hours, I collected 55 achievements, not only taking down every single boss, but every single mage and every single nameless mage. Man, that is a playthrough and a half right there, let me tell you. But of course, this sequel also has a secondary ending, and in order to get it, I decided to play through NG+. This time I did not fight any boss I didn't have to, mainly because there are so many in this game, but also NG+ in Salt and Sanctuary is pretty fair. NG+ in Salt and Sacrifice, it's a fight for your life. Every boss can take you in 2 or 3 hits. They all have enough HP to keep you on your toes, forcing you to learn attacks. And hey, it's definitely fun since you have endgame weapons early on, but I'd call it more of a challenge run than just playing the game again. Now, for most worlds, at least 1 mage is required. This opens the way to more of the map where you can defeat the 2 different bosses. After you learn the rune for another world, you go there, get the new traversal item, and continue on. I maxed out my conviction or damage at 40, endurance at 40, finally letting me medium roll in heavy armor, which is insane, and with 18 in stamina, 22 in mana amount, I felt pretty good. All NG+ salt went into vitality, being maxed at about 40 as well. I actually felt like NG+ didn't give me enough upgrades, which was the complete opposite from the first game. Maybe they gave me 1 upgrade per boss, 2 if I was lucky. Would have been nice to pump up my resolve for way more tornadoes, but it is what it is. This process of beating the game again took around 4 hours. 3 of those were for the game itself, but you'll never guess what happened for the final hour. After first trying most bosses, giving some of the harder ones maybe a second try here and there, I was feeling really good about finishing this run, when out of nowhere, the final boss decided, no. You know what, this was too easy for you. Have fun spending the next full hour fighting for your life. I beat this guy in a little over 8 tries or so during the base game. NG+ was probably quadruple that. Remember, this boss has a grab attack that is an insta-kill no matter what. Even with heavy armor and 40 in vitality, he still siphons your entire HP bar. I was shocked. Now, I also ran into an issue where he was cheating. There were several times where he was in the middle of a completely different attack animation, and my character would simply teleport into his hands and die. This was clearly working incorrectly, as even when reacting how I should, the grab just kinda got me. That made things far more difficult considering he takes around 4 to 5 minutes each attempt. And man, I tried everything. Using all those firebomb variants I had from before, trying to use ranged ammunition, then my magic, sticking with pure melee that didn't work at all to get one-shotted out of nowhere, usually while drinking a mana potion. Jeez, this was getting brutal. Can you guess what crazy strategy I tried out for the final attempt? I got naked. Yep, the classic take off all armor and no hit the fight worked like a charm. Because when all else fails, the light roll has got your back. Also, ammunition for the win. Even though I almost never used it, those small magical bolts came in clutch just when I needed them to. Don't try this game in NG+, and if you do, maybe upgrade armor. Instead of once again climbing the tree and sacrificing ourselves to the gods, we choose to pull out this power and consume it. Devour the tree, the tyranny must end. So while this land is no longer in chaos and no one is forced to suffer, the gods rain down hellfire upon us all, ending the world as we know it. And there you go, guys, a complete 100% playthrough of Salt and Sacrifice. I try to take part in every aspect of the game, not just for the Steam achievements, but to give myself the full experience. I honestly had a really great time. Much more fun than I would have expected, and while I still prefer the design aspects of the first game over this sequel, it's definitely worth a playthrough or two. Particularly the runic arts tied to weapons makes for a great time. Obviously it helps I was lucky enough to find the completely overpowered tornado as early as I did. But what can I say? 24 hours in Salt and Sacrifice, and while the story had me very annoyed at first, especially after having to fight the 2 NPCs we became friends with, not a fan of that at all, even though their quests were good for the story. But then after bringing a soldier back to his pet cat and learning the truth about this world, they had me hooked. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, a like down below goes a long way for the channel. My next 100% is not set in stone at the moment, although I am considering a series called Tales of Iron, as the sequel was released not too long ago. I'm also considering doing this without Word, as it could make for an interesting run. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.